that I use it, but I'm gonna want it. I mean, it's to do 3D rendering, kind of the same kind of thing. It needs a different kind of stuff, graphics. So, and so, I mean, it's not that it won't, it sort of won't come out, but it's only low.
Yeah.
It's like, you really won't work unless I upgrade, because it's a laptop, it's hard to replace the chips. I just have to replace. So yeah, $4,000 is the number. Which, well, I'm still working, that's okay, but I'm not gonna do that after.
Wow. Oh, things like 20 centimeters is awful one, and it's looks bulletproof, literally, it's like acid kind of.
Yeah,
Very
well,
ruggedized, I guess.
these gaming computers are actually, I mean, that's kind of what I've been using, particular line of work, what do they call them, like engineering computers, but gaming ones are actually more powerful than using.
They're the ones that actually drive the, better grab all the tech, yeah. That's exactly what you got, gaming computer type stuff, so. People more than be adequate for what you do.
Also blows my mind that that's what people do.
No.
But I print everything out and I need to read on, because I spend enough time on the computer as it is. I know. Are you guys all set? Everybody here set? Okay, we'll call the meeting to order at 6:01. So the first item on the agenda, public comments for items not on the agenda for discussion but not action. Does the public have any items they want to discuss? Okay, moving on to 3 town reports. So we have a pretty lengthy town administrator report in our packet, which I don't want to ask Vika to, reiterate, and then we have a couple of departmental reports, including from the code enforcement officer, which is great. So you probably have some things that have come up since then.
I do, yes. I'm not gonna bother reading everything that's in the TA report. I am just gonna add a couple additional things that have come up since the TA report has been added, and one of them is we did get a confirmation with all of the talks this winter with Cumberland County Sheriff's Department. We are going to have a full-time sheriff coverage on Shebig. There's gonna be no split with another town. They were able to get enough hires on board, so that is gonna be something that we will have full-time as we have in previous years. So that will start in a week or two, I think coverage would start, something like that, right before Memorial Day. So that's good news.
Sheriff Mailman.
Sheriff Mailman is coming back. Yes. So that's one of the updates. The other update is I reached out to Yarmouth. Some of you may have been inconvenienced by the traffic that's taken place on Cousins Island, and I reached out just to get an update with what the scope of work is and what the timing is. That work and that inconvenience is going to continue until about mid-July. So it is some work that they've planned for that is taking place that I'm frankly a little bit surprised that we didn't know about ahead of time. But it is gonna take place through a good chunk of the summer, so plan accordingly when you are going to the boat is really the best case scenario that we have for that.
The last time they did work there, they were kind enough to understand boat time and to try to not close the road entirely when they knew that the boat was on its way. And is that gonna be the case this time, I hope?
So what I asked for is an update on what the scope of work is and the timing. I did not ask or engage in any kind of accommodations for Shebig.
Okay.
If that's something you want me to do, then if there's the consensus from the board, I am happy to reach out to Yarmouth to see if that is an option.
Well,
That's what they did the last time, and it helped a lot.
I would say that the light cycle, they do have mobile traffic lights, and the cycle's pretty short. It's like it can't be more than 2 to 5 minutes. that when they're moving a lot of equipment, that's when we've gotten hung up, but I mean, I've been going back and forth every day and they've been pretty cooperative. They can tell obviously when the boat is coming and going, and the big problem is going to the boat, generally not coming from the ferry.
Yeah.
So anyway, I think somebody must have decided the life cycle was gonna be short. And so I don't know, I wouldn't say that having traveled it quite a bit, I don't think it's a big problem yet. Well, I think people need to be aware, because we do have people that wait till the 11th hour to.
With how much we have going on in potential future discussions with Yarmouth, with, you know, any potential future work on Cousins Island. I mean, if the board wants me to engage to try to see if there's any kind of additional accommodation. But I would be more inclined in trying to distribute and let the Shabig residents know about the inconvenience so they can plan more accordingly. Rather than trying to ask for any kind of special exception for the town.
I would prefer that. No need to wait and see what happens.
I think when they get to the bridge project, then that's when we.
That's-
have
That, when the
substantial-
bridge project happens, that is gonna be a couple of year project, which I think might be a little bit more substantial for some special understanding with the impact that it would have to.
It was the bridge project that caused that.
Right.
That discussion last time.
Yeah, this is just to the work that's happening on Cousins Island with the road work that they're doing. So those are really the two big things that I wanted to mention. The third one, it's still in the works, but we had submitted a SHIP grant through Chris Mayo for $150,000, and it was associated with the commercial floats and the ramp. I did get a confirmation from Chris Mayo that we will be granted half of that, which is $80,000, which is the maximum that they would be able to provide us. And so once we get some paperwork underway, we'll be able to process that, but there is a good chunk of cash towards some immediate needs that are needed down at Cousins Island around commercial floats and ramping that will be funded by a SHIP grant. That we will be able to proceed with the work.
The floats on the Cousins.
I'm sorry, on Shabik. The commercial float was on Shabik, yeah.
And that's the second SHIP grant, the other one was for Chandler's.
That is the second SHIP grant. The first SHIP grant we received for Chandler's for pile replacement that we were responsible for. And I did just recently get a confirmation saying that the state of Maine received the bill. And so at this point, my understanding and what we applied for was the $50,000 approximate coverage. About $48,000 and change came in for the bill. And so it is appeared as though most of it will be covered by the SHIP grant. I did get some communication that once they process it, they'll follow up. So there might be a small portion that would need to come out of a reserve account, but there was money allocated for that expense in the previous budget to cover that cost. So,
It's good news.
and that's what I have in terms of some additional information on the TA report. There was a treasurer's report. Reconciliation, bank reconciliation is cut up through March. Thank you to all of the work that Andrew has put into it. We are still kind of actively figure out how to use the new changes that we've incorporated. So it is really work in progress. And as I've said before, if you have any feedback about how to improve a treasurer's report that the select board receives, please provide that feedback so we can incorporate that in any future information that we can provide to you. As far as the expense and revenue, no significant alarming things. A couple of line items that are over budget, but as long as the entire department is not over budget, we are in good standings. And we don't appear to have any major departments that are gonna see any kind of overage between now and the end of the fiscal year. Which is in 2 months. So. And then there are other department reports from a couple of the departments. If you have any specific questions, I can either attempt to answer them or pass them on to the department for follow-up.
I have a couple questions.
Yeah.
Can you tell us where things are with the Axiom payments for the broadband that we applied to the broadband bond?
Axiom payments are paid current
Okay,
for the current year.
great. And then, what was the other question? It escapes me at the moment. Well, I think in terms of, and maybe you're gonna, in terms of the reserve accounts matching relative to the warrant.
Yes, so, I had emailed you all relative to the warrant. My goal was to, in planning the budget timeline, what I did is I intentionally squared off an extra select board meeting in case if there were any delays. I did not anticipate that I was gonna be the delay. And so my goal was at this meeting to have the warrant for you entirely complete for your review and hopefully for a vote. We don't get the reserve account numbers from the bank until after the first of the month, which usually within a week of it. So I reached out to them last week, asking for them to provide it to us by Friday, which was the first of the month, so I can compare what's in Trio, what's in the bank. There were inaccuracies there. I tried digging a little bit more and raised further questions for myself. Our bookkeeper happened to be on vacation and returned today. Hence why I followed up with an email letting you know that I just didn't feel comfortable putting information in until I had some further follow-up. Come to find out, the Trio system and the bank system are both inaccurate. That through the work that we've done with Mark Roy, we have an Excel document that is perfectly up to date and current, which I did not. I knew about, but I forgot about because the bookkeeper has been doing that managing, so it's not something that is, part of my day-to-day. And so I do have those informations that are accurate. The reason that Trio and the bank are inaccurate is because with all of these ongoing changes that we're doing with our accounting, we're basically at this point are waiting until transition into the new fiscal year to do the proper accounting in Trio to really reset them to what the exact numbers have to be. And then we also need to communicate with the bank to determine what the proper process is to either remove the money from the bank or put the money into the bank that is going to reflect what's in Trio. So there's a couple of different steps that are in the works in preparations to that cleanup with everything that we've done in a couple of months, hence why there is an Excel document that is perfectly up to date with all of the accurate information that I just didn't know to reference for that accurate information. So now that I know that and what the steps are moving forward, I'll update that and then I'll provide that with the accurate numbers in it. So then that way, all of that information is current.
One last question, just because it came up when we were reviewing the budget, but just after the 55,000 for the backhoe, what is the, I don't need to know the exact, but what's the ballpark balance of the undesignated fund?
The undesignated fund number is a little under $100,000. So there was, which the exact number, it's in the $90,000, a little bit below there, right around.
And, yep,
Go ahead. No, go
no,
ahead.
that, I was just asking any more questions.
Just on the treasurer report and use that 16, which is the broadband line 9345.
Yep,
So the line 630 grants REV is what?
Grant revenue,
So is that Axiom's payments to the town?
I think,
so, page 16.
Yep. 9345.
Broadband,
Yep.
yes, that is the, grants and interest. The number doesn't seem like it's accurate to me, so we have a revenue account that we've created. Where we were having the money going from the, accounts. With this, because it's split into revenue and expense. Then it is, yes, that is accurate, that is broadband. But what this, in my understanding, is clumping together is the broadband payments. Which is the broadband debt service payment that the Oxen is obligated to pay. But then there is also, insurance payments that they're obligated to cover.
Right.
And then there is also payments where if we exceed so many subscribers, that there is an
Right.
additional $5. And so with the revenue and expenses, as far as what's in each of those, I did not open it up to confirm what's in each of those, but with how Mark has reconfigured our expense and general ledger and revenue accounts, all of that money is within here. It's where it is that I would have to expand to further look into it.
Okay, so those should be all of Axiom's payments to us
Yes.
today, okay?
It's gonna be not just Axiom, but it's gonna be Axiom payments and reimbursements
Yeah.
for, all of the different
Subscribers.
things that they're obligated to reimburse the town based on the agreement.
Okay, and then, what were those expenses, the 14,000 change? The miscellaneous
I would
expenses,
have to expand that to look to see what it is to fully answer that, so I apologize, I'm not prepared to provide that answer. But I
Okay.
can certainly, I'll write it down and then I'll follow up.
okay, and my other question was unrelated to that, I don't know, could you, on your report. Just touch a little bit on the LD 1829, so I know that they basically state wants to increase. Density or the ability to add additional units. Properties, and then one of the issues for the island was. It seemed like a large increase in usage that, you know. In a community that has limited resources, particularly the water resources and land. So. I see some good news here that at least as far as bringing our zoning. Laws into, alignment. Then we have another year to get that done, right? That's what that. But, are they saying basically? When they say density areas, increasing 5,000 to 10,000 square feet per lot. I mean, is that based on a certain size lot and is that gonna be applying to us?
It doesn't apply to us because it's areas served by municipal sewer and water. So the new bill. So there was the original 2300, 2003, I don't know. The original bill 2 years ago. Basically kind of universally applied, and then these two bills came in and clarified, and so they allowed. Increased density in areas with public water and public sewer. So we still have some challenges on the initial bill, LD 2003, that's the number. But I think a lot of what was in 1829 and 2173 is really about clarifying for. I would say more urban areas.
Okay, so that doesn't apply to us.
But we still have some work to do to come into compliance with LD 2003. One thing that I do think is relevant though is this natural hazard exemption for sensitive locations. It used to be if you had, I don't know, slope land or, some unbuildable portions of your property that wasn't included in kind of the density calculation, but now, and I think that's a universal application now, it does get included, so basically, you might have to, of the buildable portion, you might have a higher intensity density because it's gonna take the whole property into account. Does that make sense? In other words, if you've got 10 acres and 2 of it's, kind of what we would think of as sensitive environment, the density calculation is still gonna be done on the entire 10 acre parcel. So
Right.
you're gonna be restricted to the smaller portion.
So that's not.
That's that's a pretty, and that kind of, I don't think a lot of people understood what that meant. So we think of it as, the sensitive environmental areas would minimize the density,
Right, that's not.
potential density, and that doesn't apply anymore. But it might in a practical way, but it doesn't apply in a regulatory sense. And I would mention, I think the board's aware, we did receive a grant, a housing grant, and we've recently, extended that grant because we haven't used it yet, and we will be revisiting kind of the scope, and I think so we have funds that we can hire some professional, services to help us help modify our zoning and ordinances to comply. So it's not something we have to do, the planning board or ourselves have to do, so it will be a good use of that grant.
That was my question.
Any more questions on the TA's report, the treasurer's report, or the departmental reports?
Any update on a date with the joint meeting with Long Island?
So, yes, right now there is a date, so I had emailed the select board and a few other individuals who were an interested party. The date right now that is looking as the most promising one is May 8.
I thought you said 21st, not 19th.
Friday, May 19th.
No,
No, that's not.
that's a Tuesday.
It's one of the dates that, it's one of the dates that I had sent in the poll. It's on the later end of things. It's a date that worked for most of the selectmen and, the fire chief and the school. And so what will happen is, we will likely, once the date is set, we'll try to pick a location, either likely GP cog in Portland as a central location to meet. And then see if maybe, there is an opportunity for a facilitator through GP cog to assist us. If that's what the consensus is, if not, then there is definitely some feedback in terms of how to engage and have that first discussion.
Good. So do those dates work for Long Island too?
So Long Island had provided me with the dates, and then I used those dates kind of around the Shabig's boat schedule to pick out a few other dates, and then the date that worked was the only date that the fire department and the school could both be at.
And I can't be there, but that's okay. Go ahead. Okay, so I think that covers everything under the town reports. So the next item on the agenda is a public hearing for the Slow Bell liquor license. And I guess this is an official public hearing. So we need to open the hearing on the liquor license. And we have a copy here in our packet. And I guess, I don't know what the protocol is, but I don't know if Jonathan, you have anything you want to add or?
It's just a renewal
Right,
based on, it's just that it's through the Bell system, which is online, so you do everything online, upload everything. But I'm happy to answer any questions.
okay. Does anybody have any questions?
No changes from last year.
I have just one comment and one question. So, as Jonathan said, it is, the state is now doing a new system, so, which I think is, I don't know about the applicant for municipality end of things, is a lot more official. and efficient, because we get a notification from the state of Maine that an application has been submitted, and we upload it directly from the state of Maine. And then we let them know directly through that system whether it's been approved or not, so the process is a little bit more expedited. The question that I have is on the, you do have a menu attached in here that is an old menu, so if there are no changes, is that something that shouldn't be part of this, or is that just a logistical thing that you have to include?
They just wanna see a menu. We're gonna be doing more than that. I can't put everything together till I get a coffee machine and a few other things, so I'm not trying to. I mean, I can do another menu, but it's basically, it's like. That's a menu based on what we've been doing in the past. We continue to do that, and then we'll probably be adding more.
But relative to the liquor license, are there any significant changes there?
No.
Okay, I mean, I think the food menu might change, but that.
Yeah.
I only asked that because that's the one question that has been asked of me, so I
Well, it's not-
I would pass it on in the public hearing.
Yeah.
Yep, so I mean, personally, I don't have, you know, you're not gonna start, brewing beer on site or anything.
That's a totally different license.
I imagine. So. Are there any more questions on the board? Any questions from the public on the Slow Bell liquor license? Okay, so I guess we can close the public hearing. So public hearing is closed, and then the next step, I think, is for us to act on this. So I think that's what we're looking for. Now that we have no objections, I think I could use a motion from the board to approve the liquor license for the Slow Bell.
I move that we approve the liquor license for the Slowville Cafe.
You have a second?
Second.
Earhart for second. Any more discussion about the liquor license for Slow Bell Cafe? Seeing none, all in favor? Unanimous.
I'm trying to do this now so that, because it doesn't expire till July,
We like that.
and so I'm trying to like get it back to where it's
Yeah.
pretty.
This seems like a better-
July, it's like.
Yeah.
And you hit it just right, kind of mostly done with the budget process, but not yet at the town meeting. Kind of hit that sweet spot right in between. Well done.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so we're now gonna move on to regular business and the regular items on the agenda. And, oh, sorry, we already did that, my mistake. So 2635 is to take the action on the license, so, we just did that. So we're now at 2636. This is to authorize the town administrator to sign a contract with FB Environmental for professional services to support implementation of the Maine DEP sand dune grant. So, I don't know if you wanna summarize it, or I can, either way.
I would say if you don't mind doing it, because I think you're more
Yeah, so,
involved in this process.
so the climate action team, DEP had a sand dune grant, open, I don't know, more than a year ago. And, the climate action team had been working on a couple of the beach, erosion projects, sort of, you know, thinking about ways to help minimize particularly vehicle traffic and foot traffic, damaging the dunes. And then we had some local residents, down on Jenks Road who had a lot of concerns, and it was partly, what spurred the parking lot move it back from the beach area. So bottom line was, the town decided to apply for a sand dune grant, and the grant is a combination of sort of educational outreach programs. It includes some informational signage that will go up, one at Chandler's and one at Jenks. And these are the two areas, we focused on those two areas because that's where we've had the most issues with people driving, you know, over the dunes, through the ditch and, you know, drainage systems. And so we did put some big rocks out there, and, you know, that helped minimize some of the problems, but we decided that an education program would be good. But the project also includes a workshop for property owners and contractors on shoreland zone related regulations and the new sand dune rules that came out last spring. So people from the DEP and the floodplain group, so will also be on this new resource protection. So it's basically to give people an opportunity to get up to speed on the new regulations and sort of the DEP's approach to these things. And will be DEP staff and floodplain staff and our code enforcement officer. And Addison Davis, who's our GP cog fellow, is sort of in the driver's seat organizing a bunch of things. The second workshop is a vegetation workshop for property owners on types of vegetation that they can use to help stabilize their shoreline as opposed to, hardscaping. And also some of the issues with lawns right up to the shore and why that's not necessarily the best approach to preventing shoreline erosion. So it's primarily educational. It's going to be a bunch of community involvement. And FBE actually wrote the grant, received the grant on behalf of the town, but then through some grant bureaucracy, the grant was then basically given to the town because we're really the recipient of the project. So that's why it's been quite a while since the grant was awarded that we've actually, started on it. So, and I full disclosure, my daughter works for FB Environmental, so I'll be recusing myself from voting on the contract. So that's it. I guess if there's any questions, I can try and answer them, or we can try and answer them. And I would say this is not the first contract we've had with them. So, we've signed prior contracts with that firm.
And the town, from my experience, I think this is maybe the second or third contract that is going in front of the select board. The company is very consistent, very responsive. And so as a town administrator, I have no oppositions. This is definitely a company that has been good to work with.
And the project's fully covered by the grant.
Right. All expenses are covered by the grant, except, Addison's time is in association with the grant.
Covered by the GP cog grant.
Right.
That's
Which
it.
is the biggest bargain going. Any questions?
No questions, well done.
So then I would suggest somebody make a motion to approve the FBE contract for the sand dune grant. And you need to add the amount, $18,000.
Okay, I'll make it. I'm going to make a motion for 26036 to authorize the town administrator to sign a contract with FB Environmental in the amount of 18,000 for professional services to support implementation of the main DEP sand dune grant.
Second.
Any more discussion?
So,
Any-
second.
It
It was a tie.
Tie, that's right.
Go for it.
1 minute.
And any questions from the public? All right, all in favor? So 4 and me recusing. And while we're on this, just quickly, I'm gonna point out something since I'm sort of in the similar business. This particular contract, as it says in bold, is a time and materials contract, so that means that we get billed on the time they spend and any expenses they have. I will say there's a trend in the contracting, kind of environmental services contract to do lump sum contracts. And in fact, the most recent contract, if you read it from GEI, was a lump sum contract, which is a new phenomenon for me, having worked in the field for 40 years. So a lump sum contract means we pay just a lump sum amount, but we're not tracking necessarily the costs on a monthly basis. And so it's kind of, I think, as we move forward, and this lump sum contract that we just signed for GEI was for the geotechnical work that they're doing on the stone wharf coming up next week, I think, right?
May 11th.
Yeah, So I think it's something to be aware of because it's a different mechanism in terms of costing the contract. And there is the potential, in some cases, you could pay more in a lump sum type of environment, or they might take it on the shirt. But I think you gotta be careful about reading the contract language and be aware of which types of contracts you're seeing. But the lump sum or fixed price contract is becoming more common. And it was something you did not see like 20 years ago, 10 years ago. So,
I mean, wouldn't the importance just be then to really articulate in the contracts exactly what the, you know, key markers are of completion?
yeah, but I think in this case, for example, where we have a grant and it's a certain lump sum amount that they're gonna complete the project, there's sort of no risk to us.
Right.
But in a situation where even if you define a scope of services, I mean, it can get tricky. And I think that's why you gotta make sure your scope of services really is well described, particularly if you do a lump sum contract, because you don't have any other mechanism to track costs. So it's just something I think it's just worth being aware of. And we did have, we've had some of our contracts reviewed by the town attorney, and it was. So when we did the SWCA contract on the wildfire grant, we had the town attorney review that mostly because that's NOAA funds, and we were concerned about the potential for the clawback of NOAA funds after the project was awarded. So we just wanted then to make sure there wasn't, you know, something we would be obligated to pay the full amount. We put some language in there that if the contract was clawed back, as the term goes, that we would not be obligated. That's not a common thing, but that's, you know, we can, if it's a big contract, the town attorney should review it. He's already reviewed some of these, like GEI's standard contract and, SWCA's he's reviewed. So you don't need to review what typically they do is have a standard contract and add scopes of work so that you don't have to keep, you know, reviewing the same contract. So anyway, just something I've noticed, I think you should be aware of. Okay. 2337, the next item on the agenda. This is to hear the town administrator's recommendation regarding a proposed change to the town's text alert service provider. So Vika, you had a little information in the packet.
Yeah, there is, some information in the packet. What I'm asking, for is the board's support in switching, the services that we currently use to a different one. We have been looking into this new system for the last several months. I've engaged with a couple of municipalities that currently use, and it's just more streamlined. It's municipal government. What is really appealing to this new service, it is a couple $100 more a year than what we currently pay, but it does have what it really stands out, and the positive feedback that we've received from other municipalities is a couple of things. One being that it allows us to segregate and make text alerts in terms of groups. So if we have the contractors that want to be on a text alert for any updates about stonework or code enforcement officer, if we wanted to generate a text alert just for employees to send out any notices, there is that opportunity to do that. Additionally, there is an opportunity to have a two-way communication if it's preset in the system, which one of the feedbacks that we've received, so Durham and North Yarmouth are two municipalities that use it that are closest to us, that are, what I like about it, and having spoken to them, is they're more appealing in terms of closer size in comparison. Durham's feedback was it is a service that they feel like is a substantial cost for small municipalities, but the select board and the residents really like, despite the fact that it's a small population that it serves. The interactive part, it is something that we would have to engage with customer service and pre-set it up. And it would have an opportunity for somebody to say, send a text message that says, when are the town office hours open? When's the transfer station open? And as long as we have that information automatically preset and populated, it would just send a generic text message back. And so, with this constant, discussion of how we should distribute information to our residents, social media, things like that, I would really like to try to focus on having text message be the primary, outside of the town website, kind of the primary form of communication. And, I think this is a really fitting one. And we've received good positive feedback from other municipalities close to us, and so I'm hoping that the board supports the recommendation and we can start the process and transition to it, and then by summer, hopefully have more of a system set up where we can engage in that two-way communication with residents.
Yeah, understanding and using a figure, actually, the thing I like most about it was that people could be, members of the public who report issues, hazards, things like that. And, obviously you'd have a distribution list of who got those texts. But to me, that gives you some real time feedback.
And we can create as many of kind of segregated groups as we're able to. There's the one thing that is a question in my mind is, it's a kind of a number for how many text messages. So if we have so many text messages, kind of like the old system that it used to exist, where you get so many, if you don't use them, they get rolled over and accumulated. If we exceed in a year over what we have, it would be a $395 fee for us to then double up on it. So that's really the only kind of inconvenience, but it's a small dollar amount that if we do exceed that, it's a very small dollar amount, but it's also an opportunity for us to really utilize, I think, a service that most people are using.
This makes sense to me. My question is, do all the residents have to reapply to this, or can you carry over that list?
It would be all carried over, so the list of people that we have now, we can go in the current system and we can download the information, and then we would simply provide that document to this new system, and then they would do everything. This program is directly connected through the software program that we have, the code enforcement officer software.
Good.
And go ahead.
I think this is great. I was working with the COVID committee when we got that first one going that is currently in use. How many messages are sent now when it goes out?
Yeah.
So it fluctuates. We have right around 400 subscribers right now, a little bit over, so it varies.
Okay.
And that's why, that's what I like about kind of the segregating it, because it's not, right now, we have it's the same text message that everybody gets.
Yeah.
We can make it so people that are interested in certain things receive them, and it wouldn't necessarily be going out to everybody,
Okay.
which
And
brushed on.
so in the case of, for example, a wildfire, this would reach the people who are signed up in the 400.
Yeah.
There's no possibility that it catches any other numbers in the area?
Correct.
Okay.
But this service does have an option for us to upgrade and add at a future for EMA, emergency management. Communication, so they do have it built in. It's a software that's used all over the country, and I did meet with a gentleman a couple of times because I had so many questions. And so there are opportunities to expand the program and incorporate more of like 911 type of
Right.
distributions where it would, and I don't know the full details of it, but it would be more connected of like on an emergency level of communication. It would go out to a far broader range. But like I said, I didn't really engage in a lot of that, other than knowing that that option exists, if that's something that the town wanted to engage in the future.
I
Because
think
that would be.
like
phone tree, pre-recorded phone tree messages or something like
It
that?
would be like if there is a town-wide emergency, that. That would be, something that we can, and I don't know how it somehow connects it with like the phone numbers.
Right.
But it can do it by catchment area.
Yeah.
Right, so if there was for example, a wildfire or a shelter in place.
Yeah.
That could be communicated to every phone within that
I
catchment.
see, yeah.
Mhm. I think that would be good to know about, because,
Okay.
thank you.
Any other questions on the proposal to switch to text my gov?
And does the staff in the town office do the responses? So if somebody's inquiring about hours or?
No.
So what this would would happen is we would work, with their customer service. There would be a special person assigned to it. What we would do is they would work with us to transition all of the existing customers to the new system. And then if we wanted to work with them to set up on any, automatic response messages, kind of transfer station hours, town office hours,
Okay.
address, whatever kind of the standard things that we think would come up, we would set them up. But then if a general person wanted to just respond to a text message, we in our system would be able to go in and check, kind of when you're checking like a voicemail on, you know, an office line, to check to see if any additional messages came in. To see if there's any, so we would do any kind, you know, we would do report an issue, office hours, and kind of generic.
Oh,
Things
I
that
see,
we think
when people would call in. And would they call in on the town office number?
No, it would be a text message.
Fabulous.
So you could send a text message to the, you know, town of Shubenga Island text service saying, when is the town office open? And what it would do, it would generate you the town office hours. But that's something that we would have to work with them in the background to set up.
Yeah.
And so,
Okay.
and there is no limitation on how much of that we want.
Nice.
Any more questions from the board?
Done.
Any questions from the public on the text my gov system? Okay, so if there aren't, I'd ask if somebody would be willing to make a motion.
There is a suggested motion on page 2
Yep,
of the
that's
memo
right.
associated with this,
So go
to
for
make
it.
it easier.
And authorize, move to authorize the town administrator to expend up to $3,000.
2,300.
Excuse me, didn't read it right, 2,300. From select board contingency to cover setup costs for the first year of transitioning to text my gov system.
Do I have a second? Somebody or alive, I couldn't tell. And any more discussion on the motion David just made for text my gov? Okay, all in favor? Great. We just spent some money out of our contingency, okay. All right, so I don't know exactly, so 2638 is to review and probably not approve the annual town meeting warrant for fiscal year 27. So included in our packet is a near final warrant for the upcoming town meeting on June 9th. And I had June 6th in my calendar. It's June 6th. So right there, I see a typo, but I had a few others. First page. Right? Or is that
Is that correct?
That's the voting.
That's a
Oh, June 9th is election.
Oh, okay, so okay, my mistake.
To say if I and the attorney and Krista missed the actual date of the meeting.
So I guess what I wanted to, I think Vika already explained earlier that, the numbers are not final in the reserve account.
It's the reserve accounts, they're blank, the approximate current balance and estimated current balance. That's blank. That's the only part of the town warrant, so the town warrant includes the school warrant articles, which went to the school attorney, which came to me, which I put in here. I reviewed this and compiled this document. It was reviewed by Krista, it went to the town attorney. So if you have picked up on any kind of,
Found a few.
anything in here, please let me know, because I've yet to bring a town warrant to town meeting where somebody at town meeting did not find a mistake. And I'm determined to not have it at one point in my career.
My name is misspelled.
There we go.
Can't have that.
Oh,
What page is that?
The final thing.
last page.
Oh my God.
See how we, thank you.
It's a good catch.
I have a sort of general question though, because I see that when we're doing the capital reserve accounts, we're raising the money as a lump, as 805,000.
Yeah.
I thought when we were met with Mark, he was saying they had to be individual articles. Am I remembering that wrong?
It's been done as a
It's always been done,
As a
yes, but I thought.
chart for several years.
Yeah, and I think I guess what I'm saying is, I'm fine, leave it that way if we're gonna consolidate the accounts, cause I do think it would be pretty tedious to go through and do these one by
I
one.
mean, what I would do is I would have to see if the town will approve and appropriate
Yeah.
$135,000 to fire department reserve account. That's how we would be split up.
And then I mean, if we had to do that, we could bundle them and approve them all as a package. But I thought, I'm just sort of revisiting the conversation we had with Mark, where I thought he recommended they be individual articles for each account, but I could be wrong. Maybe I'm wrong. So
I don't remember.
I would have to go back and try to either verify that with him or confirm that in my notes, but I can't speak off of memory.
and then the explanation, 4.38%, that number is a little different than the number I calculated just recently, so we can check that number on this.
For the reserve accounts?
Yeah, well, the increase from fiscal year 26 on page 11,
Okay,
it doesn't quite jive, but I could have a mistake. And then there was, it's a minor thing, but there was a typo. I didn't bring that, I highlighted the one I had, but,
well, you just, I mean,
I'll provide
share
it,
them
yeah.
with me if
Yeah.
you guys find anything. The plan is to bring this in front of you as a final document that you will approve and vote on at the next select board meeting.
and then, because we've discussed it a couple times, the, school did take out the warrant article that kind of gave them a lot of latitude in their budget, so they did agree to take that out.
Yeah.
So.
I was surprised they didn't replace
something-
that with
I know.
some flexibility,
Well,
like the town has in Article 47.
by statute, they do, it
Okay.
is in statute, but it's only 5% on statute.
Okay, that's fine.
But, I think that's okay. So I think if you need to go over this with a fine tooth comb, because Nika's ready for a complete score where she doesn't have a single mistake. So it's our job to help her with that. So every year, Herb's always finding mistakes, so, and I remember.
Send it to him.
Yeah, and so anyway, I just did an independent compilation of the budget. Not using the warrant, and compared the numbers to the warrant, and they pretty much match, except for that one I just mentioned, so I think the numbers are right. But,
Yeah, when I put this together, I take the last budget that you discuss and approve, and I use the information from that to put it in here, and it's easy to make mistakes. I had a couple numbers that were kind of, backwards, and Krista caught them. Believe it or not, a couple of years ago, one of the school warrant articles, I had like a 5 and a 6 switched. Nobody picked up on it. The town voted on it, and the town basically allowed the school over an additional $100,000 of flexibility because of the mistake that wasn't caught that I had made. So I do appreciate people taking a thorough look just to make sure, cause staring at this for hours on end, everything all looks the same and it makes it really easy to not see my own mistakes. Like misspelling somebody's name that I clearly know how to spell pretty well.
I'm just trying to understand sort of the process. So on Article 41, it says.
What page are you on?
That's 9. Article at bottom
Yeah.
of the law. So it says to see what the town will vote to raise and appropriate for debt service.
Mhm.
And I'm just gonna pick one item because I was on the broadband committee. So what are we really asking here? Because the bond bank debt we already have, it's established,
Yeah.
right? We already approved it a long time ago.
Yes.
So what are we voting to raise and appropriate?
So you're voting to raise and appropriate $458,000
Right, but okay,
to pay for those bond banks that a few years ago or over the years that another select board and town voted to engage in those debt services.
yeah,
So
I guess the
this is
question is,
the thing.
you can't vote not to do it, because,
You can.
You can,
and then you're gonna default.
Right,
correct.
Okay.
There
And
is,
it's
That was
probably-
kind of the process questions, like.
probably been done.
there is one of the things that in this process that I was told, like, for example, Cumberland County. We pay Cumberland County over $150,000, something like that. We're obligated to pay that, and it's actually Mark Roy was the one that, told me this, and then the town attorney confirmed. We don't have to put that warrant article on town warrant because the town has an obligation to pay that to Cumberland County. But I didn't feel comfortable removing that because it's always, as long, in the 11 years I've worked for the town, that warrant article has always been there. So that's more for the benefit of kind of transparency, because that's also a huge chunk of our minimal, on the greater scheme of things, a small budget. But to have $160,000 of that be something that we're obligated to pay and we have to regardless to not be. I didn't feel comfortable not putting that in. So that's an example of something that is purely there for transparency, that if the town voters were to say no, I think Cumberland County would say, doesn't matter, you're obligated to pay this.
Right, it's just, I think for, people like myself was having that question, it wasn't clear to me, it's like. It sounds like we're asking for this big lump of money. When in fact, we actually have the obligation already, so. We're
Correct,
just saying that we as a town are gonna pay our debt,
yeah.
Yep,
which is.
out of taxes though, that's kind of, out of
Yes.
taxes.
Yeah.
Out of taxes, and then the other part of this too is, it puts an obligation on us as employees and elected officials to stand by this. So
Sure.
then come July 1st, select board and the town office is obligated by the town vote to make these payments. So,
Would it help to say, appropriate for, existing debt service obligation?
I mean, that would make it clearer.
yeah, I'm happy to add the word existed into it.
Yeah, existing debt service obligations, yeah, I like that. That really helps.
That makes it clear.
Makes it clear,
That we don't have much choice.
right. And we have the obligation, for example, the one that the comment was the broadband, we have that obligation, even though Axiom has an obligation to pay it on our
Yeah.
behalf, essentially.
Well, and that, yeah, the Axiom paying it is a completely
Completely separate.
separate agreement between Axiom and the town that is really irrelevant to to the bond bank.
Right,
It's the town's debt.
Right.
So
Got it.
they don't care what, what issues we do or don't have with who's responsible for it. It's the town that took out the debt.
I like your edit.
And then on page 5, article 19 and 20, just so you're aware, those are kind of housekeeping articles because initially the school committee appropriated these funds at the school committee level and found out later that they need to really be doing that through town meetings. So these are funds that they moved from their capital reserve account I mean, from their undesignated, let's see, yeah, capital reserve account. And so, into their capital reserve account, and so. They're just cleaning up their past history with those two articles. That money is not, it's already been moved. It's not really happening. We're just approving it after the fact. Just so you know. And it says, 2020, from the undesignated fund balance on May 2024. So it's just to kind of become compliant. And then going forward, of course, they'll do that, so. So anyway, I think, we don't have any new bonds being appropriated, debt service is really pretty flat, and so. There are no huge changes, and it's really the status quo with this warrant.
Yep,
you know,
very
this warrant.
basic standard,
Which is-
the only unusual out of the ordinary warrant article in here is the warrant article that is asking to move funds from the solar array reserve account to, which it is Article 49, which is on page 12, which is after the big empty, reserve account, document that's in there, and it's to see if the town will appropriate the transfer from solar array to building facilities.
And one thing some towns do is if the finance committee is involved in evaluating things, they would specify that both the finance committee and presumably the select board recommend approval of the article. Sometimes you'll see that the finance committee recommends it and the select board doesn't. So it's sort of two different steps to sort of show we don't really have we have an ad hoc finance committee at this point, but at some point in time, we may want to formalize kind of that process, but with some towns, oftentimes you'll see that the finance committee also weighs in on the articles and they don't always agree, which is kind of why they exist, kind of two different perspectives on it. And it's usually related to things like debt service or capital, expenditures.
And there is an explanation under each warrant article, kind of summarizing a little bit of what the changes were. I will say I did have our previous town attorney told us that it's not a practice that, she had seen common. And she recommended that we take out the explanations, but once again, because it's something that has existed for years in the town articles, I think they're helpful.
I think if you took a vote of the citizenry, they would consider it. More people than not would consider it.
Yeah, and I mean, for example, with the Article 49, just having a brief explanation that the finance committee did a review. Select board recommended,
Yeah.
it just gives people a little bit of context of where that came from. Hopefully expediting the town meeting process a little bit to eliminate those kind of questions.
Absolutely.
And then, Article 60, which basically says that, that we would have a candidate's opportunity at the end of town meeting. I just wanted to know, does the town has anybody informed the candidates that that's gonna happen or likely will happen so they know to be there? I think I can remember circumstances where the people weren't there and I don't know if they knew.
No, but that's a great suggestion. You mean for the people that took out, like
Right.
Eliza, to run for another 3-year term, to let those folks know that there is a specific article at town? Yeah, that's a great idea.
Well, and I'm thinking specifically for Alyssa, who's new to the process probably.
Yep.
So would you?
I'd be
take that?
happy to reach out and let her know for sure.
Yeah.
Eliza, this is your official notice.
I've been working on my speech.
Okay.
Is there just one candidate for the school board?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, good.
Okay, well, I think if so, the game plan is that is it at the 13th meeting or maybe the 4th?
No, they'll be at the following meeting.
Okay, so-
Next week, it's
Is the work
not a select board meeting, it's a workshop. This will be at the May 20th meeting.
Okay.
Yeah.
And remember, we're just like everybody else at town meeting. Right?
Yeah.
You just could stand in the back of the room, listen. Okay, so go through it again and please check it because it's good to have a bunch of different eyes on it. And so, we're gonna move on to the next article and not sit here till 8:30 tonight. So 2639 is to discuss the joint budget workshop that will take place with the Select Board, School Board, and Finance Committee on May 13th. So we have members of the Finance Committee here. And so the purpose of this workshop is to give the public an opportunity to hear sort of a brief synopsis of the budget, what to expect, and then have an opportunity primarily to ask questions. And I think in sort of informal discussions with the Finance Committee, I think we're looking at, 10, 15 minutes for each, for the school committee, school committee, select board, finance committee to make presentations. And then probably try to maybe hold the questions till after that, we can see, but the goal would be like an hour meeting max. And so we already received slides from the school committee, from the superintendent, and I haven't done anything myself yet, but it's not the kind of thing where we're gonna have a lot of slides. I would say one reason that we're kind of focused on this is 2 or 3 years ago, the school committee prepared a really great meeting after the previous town meeting where there were a lot of questions about the school budget. The following year, they prepared a pretty extensive public presentation and no one showed up. So, and even last year, we didn't have a particularly great attendance, if I remember, maybe 10 or 12 people. So we'll see, but this year the difference is too, and I'm kind of, late to the game here, but it's gonna happen. We're gonna send out a mailing that will include sort of a notice about the meeting and a brief summary of the school budget, the town budget, and then the finance committee sort of has a summary of what they've been working on, and that might bring some more people out. The goal overall is to get people more engaged, but also to avoid the kinds of questions we often get at town meeting because people have never thought about it till they walk in the door that Saturday. Still not gonna eliminate that, but anyway, that's kind of the game plan. And one thing I wanted to ask the select board is, we've all been assigned to sort of specific town departments. Right? Do you remember who you have? I was asking Vika today because I couldn't honestly remember. I remember you're the fire department. That's sort of the logical one, but at any rate, I think you need to be prepared to answer questions if they come up about that specific department. So you should be familiar with what are the changes in the budget from the previous year and why, what's the overall amount, whatever questions the public might ask about that budget, and if it's something you can't answer because you don't have the information, then I would ask you to research it with the department and get back to them. So I think that kind of distributes the responsibility a little bit across the board. So does anybody need a reminder about what their assigned department is?
No, it's my favorite department.
Which is solid waste?
Solid waste, yes.
And so, Richard, what do you have? I couldn't remember.
Other than the CTC.
Well, that's not a town
That's not
department.
That was this, I don't remember what Richards, and after I got off the phone with you, I got distracted with another phone call.
Ika will send you an email
Yeah.
she'll send out an
Yeah.
email with our assignments, but really, I'm not joking. You need to make sure you're familiar at least with that part of the budget, so you can speak intelligently, and it's not one person answering all the questions, and
Okay.
we may have no questions, or we may have a bunch, you never know. So, I guess, so there is this draft mailing. I finally pulled all the pieces together today, and John, you've reviewed it, right? And you're okay with the way it is?
Yeah, I read through it, it seemed fine.
Okay,
Yeah.
and so the select board can look at it, and we hope to kind of get it printed in the next 24 hours. So I will send it to you by email, but I have paper copies here.
Yes.
Yeah.
And one question I have, it is longer probably than most people would like to see. I think the school committee and this town has about a page, well, school committee has a page and a half, the town has 2 pages, because we included a discussion of the infrastructure projects. And then Vika added the, tax calculation. And then the finance committee sort of just has a summary of what they've been working on and kind of the metrics they've been using. So read it through. I mean, it was longer, I cut it down quite a bit, but, if you think it needs to be chopped more, that's kind of good input, so. I mean, it's enough, we try to make it intelligible enough for people to get the gist of things without, overwhelming. And I do think, it was interesting putting together sort of the summary tables that, in fact, I'll pass these down so you can look at them. But for me, it made more sense to think of the budget in these much more, the whole thing goes as a package.
Oh, these are whole.
Yeah.
I'm sorry,
One page.
I'm sorry. So I
Yeah.
didn't understand.
Yeah, I didn't say that, so
What we've got here.
This is all, those were, everything that came out was all together.
just
It was one pack.
send it down the end.
Just send it all to the end and then we'll send it.
But 2 pages per.
No, it's
Just send it
accumulate
all.
all, send them all to Rich and then he'll have a full pack.
I didn't even staple them together, because literally printed them when I got home.
I get it.
Yeah, yeah.
But in this write-up is a table that summarizes the primary categories in the budget. And what we did, what both the school and the town did, is we focused specifically on the operational budgets for the school and the town and took out things like the county tax, the debt service, the things that we don't really, that aren't impacted by the operational budgets, because I think people, you'll hear Mark Dyer in particular ask that question, how much is the operational budget going up? And I think that's a question. So we separated them out so you can actually answer that question. And what's interesting is not a lot. I mean, the overall budget is going up 4% from last year. Overall counting debt service and everything. The town municipal operations departmental budgets is going up about 5%. School is even less. I think it was 3%. And one of the big things that I did try to explain, and then I took it out of the document, is the whole idea that we're not putting as much money from the town side undesignated fund towards, so the budget has gone up $170-something thousand. So there's an increase there, but there's also a decrease in the offset with the undesignated fund, so we have to raise those 2 things. It's $250,000 additional through taxes, and that's why, even though the budget's going up 4%, the tax increase is more significant. And so it's a little hard to explain that. I'm gonna throw that to the finance committee if we have to. I had a whole explanation in the document, but then I thought, oh my God, they'll just be crazy. I put the fact in there that the undesignated fund is not, the number is smaller than the previous year, and we'll take it from there. I thought that was the simplest way to go. But it's an important concept about why the budget appears to be increasing even more than you'd expect, but, we'll leave it to see if people have questions.
But basically just saying we're not using that to offset the taxes. Because we're making a commitment to build our reserve funds for futures to mitigate sharp increases in taxes. So-
Yeah, it is, but we're not putting any into reserve funds either this year. So frankly, so it's really just, and the reason I also took the explanation out, if you look at the table, the school is putting money from their unreserved fund towards the taxes. So I didn't wanna kind of throw them under the bus. When I wrote up the whole explanation, I thought if I was the school committee, I'd be mad at me. So I think we're just, I mean, to be frank, we actually put $55,000 from the undesignated fund towards the backhoe in this fiscal year. But that's why I was asking Vika what the balance was, so it's about 100, it's a little under 100,000. So we're really not in a position to use, we're in the, what, I don't know, what percentage are we at then?
It
with
would
that?
be in the low percent, so what was left was on the low end of the 16%.
This is on the undesignated,
What we currently
Yeah.
have.
so we spent that down.
Basically.
basically.
A lot of money has been expended down because basically the two special town meetings we had to fix the clerical errors based on the work with Park Roy and then the VACO expense. A lot of the undesignated fund has been used for those to not go to taxpayers and ask for that to be appropriated for taxes. There is a small amount there. But it was not recommended to be used towards anything and. With the transition of next budget cycle, that money just doesn't go away, it'll still be there, and then, if we've over budgeted substantially in the previous and this budget, there will be a surplus.
It's likely it might grow. Once we're done with this fiscal year to whatever additional funds we have left over. I think that's one thing the finance committee will probably track. In other words, we don't wanna have $200,000 left over every year because then we're over budgeting. But we wanna, I think what would happen in the future is, say we end up with $200,000 in the undesignated fund, we might choose to take 50,000 of that money and apply it to a reserve account as part of town meeting. Which in the past, we thought we were sort of doing that, but it wasn't exactly the same. I mean, we were putting in a substantial amount of money into the reserve accounts and then trying to offset it with undesignated fund allocations. And in our minds, we thought it was kind of the same idea, but I think it's a good practice to be more direct about how we do it. So it's very transparent to the taxpayers.
So I think using an example of last year, there was about $775,000 of taxpayers' money that was raised and appropriated to put into reserve accounts. But $156,000 was used of undesignated fund and put into revenue to offset the tax increase. So realistically, I think to be fully transparent and based on the current policy that was recommended by the finance committee, approved by the select board, instead of using, the 775 or whatever it was, you would have taken the 156, subtracted it from the 775, used whatever the difference was to appropriate of the taxes, and used the 156 to say, instead of undesignated fund going to revenue, it's undesignated fund going to this specific reserve account or distributed across them. So then it kind of, it minimized what was raised by the taxes, but it still would have done the same thing, just more transparent and not in the perception that the taxes, were going up.
What date will we expect to know the final amount of the undesignated funds?
I can share that with you, I think.
Just approximately, like, will it be? So this is a two-part question, so when we do know that amount, we will receive a recommendation from the finance department, or do we just?
So for the current budget process as it is, there is no undesignated funds being recommended to go anywhere. Because so much of it has already been expended, there is roughly around $90,000 that is available. What that would do, it would bring the select board to the bare minimum of what's within the policy.
Of the 16 to 24.
Correct.
For within this fiscal year, when we close out fiscal year 26 that we are now in. And the town will continue to get some bills post, July, that will be for, say for 2 or 3 months, they might get bills that are really gonna be. This, you can explain this better than I can, but basically they'll get allocated.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
our fiscal year ends June 30th.
Right.
But bills will continue coming in staggering for a month or two. And so that, when that happens, that's still fiscal year 26 that we would need to use those funds. So we can predict relatively good based on our current expenses and the current trajectory, what the anticipated amount difference might be, but it's not gonna be accurate until probably closer to like August.
Right.
Okay,
September, when we have a better idea of how much of fiscal year 26 has been expended, to give us a better idea of what that difference is. The last number of years, there has been always a surplus, which we are over budgeting slightly. Which is, you know, a separate conversation, I think.
Right.
Maybe with over budgeting is under budgeting, you're asking taxpayers, over budgeting, you're asking them too much, so.
Right.
It's kind of finding that happy medium.
So at least one of the primary purposes of a specific percentage of the budget to have in undesignated funds is to cover those late bills that come in.
Nope,
Nope.
that is still within the budget, within the fiscal year, so everything you're appropriating for the current warrant in fiscal year 27.
I'm
So
talking about 2026. So
Yeah.
I'm talking about, so
So-
you said that the
20
budget ends, the budget year ends, right? But bills are still coming in that are.
correct,
before
so
that.
any expenses that took place, like on
Accounted
June
for.
30th, if a fire truck maintenance had to take place. That bill is gonna come to us, you know, at some point in July. When that bill comes, as long as that expense took place in that fiscal year of 2026. We use the 2026 budget, so we have to go into previous year budgeting and allocate money from the previous year to pay that expense that took place.
So it's tracked in the fiscal
In the
year
previous
26
fiscal year.
account.
So still monies in those accounts. that
Yeah,
haven't-
July and August is awful for the bookkeeper and town accounting because we're physically moving ourselves from current and previous year. We're tracking two different budgeting cycles and have to be really mindful of when the bills come in, when the bills are sent, when the work is happening. So we're doing, so you'll see come July and August, you will be getting two warrants at the same time because it will be a previous fiscal year and a current fiscal year.
Okay,
Kind of the staggered, you know, bills from.
so then what I originally thought was correct, undesignated funds are basically emergency funds for,
Yeah, so when the
Unanticipated.
year is over, when we're completely done paying all the bills, we look at where the budget ended and determine what the surplus of the unexpended funds that had been voted on at that town meeting, and then the difference of that is what goes into undesignated fund. And that's the policy that gives the select board the flexibility to use the money within a certain percentage point.
But it's a rainy day fund.
Yes.
right,
And so,
that's
but,
what I originally thought, and I was confused by.
but the use of them has to be approved by town meeting.
Yeah.
So we don't have access to them directly. We have to go to town meeting to allocate those funds. And that's the cleanup action in the warrant for the school side,
Mhm.
that they didn't go to town meeting.
And we did those earlier with like the backhoe ones.
Right, and so the backhoe is a perfect example of an emergency expense from the undesignated fund, and lucky we had money in there for that, because otherwise, the other alternative is you would have to actually raise taxes, which towns have had to do this, from the community midstream. In other words, you set your tax rate, and then you, whoops, we don't have enough money. I don't even know how it
Yeah,
works.
the tax assessor, so if we had to go to a special town meeting and raise $100,000 for an expense, the tax
Yeah, something.
assessor would have to reconfigure the tax assessment, and then that $100,000 is redistributed evenly to all of the taxpayers, and then their own additional money. And so that's
Like a
where the
supplemental
undesignated
tax.
fund is helpful in that case.
Yep.
We had those in sales.
And I guess the thing I feel better about this year. Previously, it was very, we were sort of more than 1 year behind in kind of the. Understanding I just don't think the accounts were nailed down that well, and. Then we had the auditors working on them that frankly, I didn't find particularly helpful, so. There was a lot of uncertainty about how much money was actually in the undesignated fund. Fortunately, we didn't overexpend them, but I feel more comfortable going forward with the way we're headed, that we're gonna have a much more predictable, way to track the funds, even in real time, so that we're not it's not a mystery if we, if we track our budget accurately and we know what we started with, like we have been this year, I think we could pretty closely estimate, what we're gonna end up with in August, so to speak, with extra money. So it's kind of like, it's a rainy day fund, that's kind of what we think of it, just like the state just wiped theirs out, so,
And you factor that in on your budget.
right. So anyway, any questions from the finance committee on the presentation? I would say.
No, having read the write-up, I think it makes sense for the finance committee to go last.
Well, that's, the school committee asked if they could go first, I think partly, maybe so they can make the vote, which I'm fine with, and so they suggested, school, town, and sort of the same order as the.
Yeah, and we'll definitely talk about the $805,000 in the reserve account, because that was our biggest real contribution to the budget. We'll be prepared to talk about the rainy day fund and that. We'll probably have a comparison of,
The impact of
the
taxes.
the total budget numbers over years and the percentage changes, but we're only gonna have 6, 8, 10 slides, and if you've already covered it, then we'll skip a slide, but
I will say the slide which shows the increases that have happened over time, that is a highly effective slide that I still hear about from people. And also the slide showing the difference of what our taxes would be if we had stayed with the town of Cumberland. That is very effective.
Well, I thought there was a slide that Chip put together that was more, I thought the one that was the rate of inflation versus our tax.
yeah.
Yeah,
That's the other one.
that's the one.
Yeah,
I'm sorry, that's the one I'm.
yeah, I thought that's what you meant.
Yeah.
That's a
So
good slide.
those can be quick, but they have high impact on people having an appreciation for the increases.
Yeah, we're sort of preparing them, aren't we?
Yeah.
Grouse reduction strategy.
But anyway, there are no, so I will say too, though, we have a lot of land use ordinance. We have some zoning maps we need to adopt, there's a number of things. It's been hard to move the ball forward on the land use side. The planning board is, short, staffed. And anyway, I think we do have a goal to have a special town meeting, particularly on the coastal maps that we have to adopt. And also, just so the board is aware, the Maine Department of Environmental Protection told us that our shoreline zoning ordinances are not compliant and technically not, not up to speed and could be challenged. So we really do need to bring them up to compliance so that they're buttoned up. So that, it's not a question of, should we do it? We really have to do it.
But who does that?
Town meeting does it. So we have to bring revised ordinances to town meeting and the community has to adopt them. The shoreline zoning ordinances in particular, the DEP has to review the change. We made changes, but we did not get them approved by the DEP, and until they approve them, they are not, they're not valid. So that's kind of, and we've made multiple changes, so we're gonna have to go through that process with them. Our code enforcement officer is aware. So I'm just saying that probably midsummer or sometime in there, we said this a year ago, but we are gonna do it this year. We'll have a special town meeting mostly dedicated to ordinance updates. And I frankly think it's better to take it out of the regular town meeting, which is the finances, and sort of have it a separate thing. Trying to do two at the same time, it can be difficult.
Carol, could you delineate what is the responsibility of the select board versus the planning board?
The planning board is tasked with, maintaining and updating the ordinances. That is what part of their, charge is.
Right.
It doesn't mean though that the select board, anybody can change, propose to change an ordinance. So, and in this case, I think it's, this is probably it's not on the agenda, it's a separate conversation, but I think it's, something we should discuss.
Thank you.
And the other thing I will mention, it's a small thing, but there is a funeral at 1 o'clock on Saturday of town meeting, which was moved from 10 a.m. or 11 a.m. So anyway, I think most people are gonna want to be out of here before then, which is a good thing.
My mom mentioned that there are 2 funerals that
Oh,
night.
maybe?
That's what she said.
Well, I know of one that was originally in the morning, they got moved to the afternoon, right, Malcolm Rice's,
Malcolm is.
right? So there might be another one, but I didn't know that. All right, next, we're gonna move into other business. Vika, did you have anything else you wanted to bring up under other? business?
I probably do, but, I'm not prepared if I do.
Okay. I just sort of, to bring everybody up to speed on other business, just so you're aware, we are submitting a grant application for the main infrastructure adaptation fund for the balance of the, estimated cost on South Shore Drive, or not all of it, but a chunk of it. Trying to get some funding for the state to cover the difference between what FEMA covers and what the town will have to pay. But given the way the grant is written, we won't recover all, we won't apply for the entire cost, but probably 2/3 or 3/4, something like that. So if anybody's interested, I'm happy to share the grant application with you, before it gets submitted. We've submitted a couple lately, so it's, this one is a little more straightforward because it's, an engineering design, and so the numbers are there and the design is there. It's not, you don't have to make up a story, it kind of is just factual. So,
Do you have an amount of that? Do you have an amount of that? yet?
oh, an
The
amount
total amount to be raised by the town?
for,
For that grant.
well, we just talked about it today, 250,000, maybe something that we might apply for. The difference could be anywhere from 300 to 500,000, depending on how the bids come in or what the project ultimately, we don't know what.
438 is the number we have.
Right.
That we're working with now based on the.
The
Estimate.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you.
But we don't know. I mean, the bottom line is we don't know, and I think once the project goes out for bid, we'll know.
Yeah.
So we're gonna have to predict and not go over, not screw around.
Okay.
But that would be helpful for the town. Okay. The next, any communications, so I think people, one thing, and I fell down on the job as the chair this week. So we did receive an email communication from a community member about, concerns about a code enforcement issue. And I just wanted to remind everybody, the policy that we've tried to use, because we were having a lot of this historically. We haven't, since this year, it has not been quite as frequent. When the board as a whole gets an email, the protocol is for the chair to respond and acknowledge that we've received the email, but we don't actually engage in any discussion because the board has to operate as a unit. So when it comes to the board has to, the only way we can discuss those things is in a meeting as an agenda item. So, or under some other, communication, but, and I've had a pretty busy week. I didn't respond right away. A select board member did respond directly. But for example, that doesn't necessarily reflect the perspective of the entire board. So that's why we try to control that communication. So it's clear that, if there's any communication going out, it's coming from the board as a whole. And typically, it's pretty uncommon that the board actually has a role in these communications. It's usually that we have to direct them to Vika, most typically. In this case, it was the code enforcement officer. So I think sometimes we get these communications just to keep the board in the loop, which I think is good and appropriate. And so it's not like people shouldn't be emailing the whole board, but we're not gonna, comment on the emails individually. So does that make sense to everybody?
Mhm.
Yeah. And I didn't respond immediately, and that's my bad because I just was behind the 8 ball, but, anyway, there have been, you know, so there's that communication that we received, and I'm trying to think, I don't think that I've had anything else of significance. Has anybody else had any direct, you know, verbal communication or email communication that they want to bring up?
I do.
Yep, okay.
On September 13th, which is a Sunday, at the inn is hosting the Main Island Trails Association and the Chickadees. Ever heard of the Chickadees?
No.
Those are women that do things. Yeah, that is.
Yeah.
So,
I think there's a woman saying that.
right, okay, no comment. So anyway, they would like to make a meaningful impact on the community with some volunteer effort, estimating about 70 volunteers for approximately 1.5 hours.
Huh.
So to be thinking about, is there a way that this, I'm not gonna call it manpower, but that this effort could be used here on the island. It could be divided into separate tasks. But I think it's a really, to have 70 volunteers out here for the Main Island Trail, which is so finely tuned to life on island.
Yes.
This is a wonderful way. So if I would suggest we start looking at different projects that organizations could.
Are they looking for outdoor projects specifically? Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
And how did you hear about it?
Through Stuart Feldspach, who's the facilities manager for the organization.
Okay.
So I'm thinking, I would recommend, you know, looking at some ground. Things that need to be cleaned up in the grounds at the rec center, maybe at the commons, some other locations. So it could be that, it could be some beach cleanups, it could be all sorts of things. So it would be nice to have a series of projects and maybe involve building.
What was the day, September what?
September 13th, Sunday.
You're just running through the summer entirely here.
I'm gonna join the Chickadees.
I like the name.
A badge.
I gotta admit, I like the name. All right, so any other communications of note? Okay. Next, it's the minutes for April 15th and April 28th. And I have a motion to approve those minutes. So Eliza moved, David second. Any discussion or corrections to the minutes of April 15th and April 28th?
None.
Okay, next, any, oh, sorry, so, okay, all in favor? It's not even that late. All right, so that's approved. Items to be placed on a future agenda, if you have anything that comes to mind at the moment, I'm happy to hear about it. If you think of something in the future, you can send an email to me. We do keep a running spreadsheet that why don't I do that actually? Because, it might be good for people to see what's on there, some things that we've sort of put on the back burner. The other thing I'd like to do as we get towards the end of this fiscal year is to revisit our, retreat action items and see how we're doing. I went through them the other day and we're not bad, but I mean, I think it would just be instructive to quickly go through those and kind of see what we did and what we didn't do. And then, you know, it kind of informs, I think when the board is reconstituted after, you know, the end of the fiscal year, we should plan another retreat because I think it's pretty productive.
Can
So,
I make a quick?
Yep.
One thing that I should have mentioned that I forgot to mention. So because I'm part of the executive committee now with GPCOG recently reached out to me to, they have their GPCOG retreat coming up and, they're doing a brief, recap on how GPCOG has helped municipalities. And so they asked me if I would, participate and make a suggestion as far as what they've done and how they've helped Shebig. When I agreed to do it, I did not realize it was gonna be recorded. So the GPCOG committee at the executive summit, my face will probably be 3 feet wide. But they're doing just a little video of some municipalities that they worked with, and so they had a brief interview where I did a brief recap of.
Yeah.
How the select board has been doing their retreats the last couple of years, and that they've been helpful in kind of setting up a roadmap for the year.
Yeah.
And then speaking of interviews, I have another one, MMA is going to have an article in the future coming up on Marjorie. And so they called and asked me some questions, and I also passed them Herb's contact, because he had worked with her,
Yeah.
but then also played music, so they were kind of looking for somebody that had known her on both levels, so, if you are part of MMA in the next probably 1 or 2 articles, there'll be a big one about Marjorie.
Great. Okay.
By the way, I sat next to her at the Main Island Coalition meeting, and it was an absolute joy to catch her up on how things are going and, how her legacy continues.
Okay. So I think we're down to the last item on the agenda, and that's an executive session. So if I could have a motion with the specific article for why we're moving into executive session, that would be helpful.
I move that we move into executive session pursuant to 1 MRSA 4056A Personnel Committee.
Okay, can I have a second? Second, Eliza. And all in favor?